And so let's welcome Monica onto the Film Threat podcast here. Monica, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us. This is awesome. Wow. Look at that. What are those books or magazines in the background? That's
Oh
awesome.
my God, you know what those are? I live in a guest house in Bel Air, and the people that own the property is Richard Rush, who made The Stuntman with Peter O'Toole,
Oh
and
my God.
yeah, he was nominated for Academy Award. Unfortunately, he died last year,
Mm.
but he was just an amazing man. Those are all scripts that he either turned down or shot.
Wow. First of
It,
all, The Stuntman with Peter O'Toole. If you have not seen that movie, amazing film. You're getting a lot of love in the chat. People saying, "Welcome, Monica.
oh,
Welcome.
thank you,
Hey,
thank you.
Monica." Solomon Thornton. Hi, Monica. That's great.
Aw.
They're loving you. This is awesome. We will get to the questions in the chat right now, but I want you
Okay.
to tell us about Chloe and Theo and what inspired the film.
Oh my God. So first of all, I'm not a filmmaker. My background is disease research, and so I worked in South Africa with end stage AIDS and cancer patients for 5 years prior to making the movie. And I had a relationship with Richard Branson because Richard Branson had funded a lot of the AIDS work. And so on one of my trips back, a producer named Lloyd Phillips, who is a wonderful human being, unfortunately also passed away a couple years ago, but he had been to a climate change event and he had met a man named Theo Ikumek, who was a Inuk person from the Arctic. And he had told him all these stories about what was going on in the Arctic and climate change and, kind of went on. And he was very frantic about getting his message out. And so Lloyd called me and said, "You're a do gooder. Why don't you help him do something for him?" And I made a comment that I regretted instantly because I said, Lloyd, I'm up to my eyebrows in AIDS and cancer right now. And he goes, "Monica, 50 million people might die of those diseases, but we're all going to die from climate change." And so I felt awful instantly and thought, yeah, you're right. Okay, what can I do? So I called Theo and ended up speaking to him. And he wanted to know if I knew any person that was famous that could come on a dog sled journey just to witness what was going on. They were going on a 3-month journey and they were going to visit 5 remote Inuit villages and talk to all the elders, and they were going to tell about the changes and all of that. So I made a master list of anyone famous that I knew. And of course, Richard was on the top. And I called him, and 6 minutes later, he called me back and said, "Yeah, I'll go. Let's do it." And so we went. A month later, we were in minus 45 degrees in the Arctic, traveling by dog sled. And we did it for 3 months. We slept on the ice. We visited each village. We talked to all the elders through translators. And it was just the most mind blowing experience, as you can imagine. But we learned so much. And I came back almost depressed because it just was so tragic and there didn't seem like we could stop it, basically. And there were a lot of changes. And so we decided that instead of making a documentary, because we shot 200 hours of footage, and if there's any great editors out there who want to help me do something with that footage, I would love to hear from them. But it's just sitting on a shelf right now because when we looked at it, it just wasn't the right message. We flew to the Arctic with a man who owns an airline, and we're talking about climate change. And that
Mhm.
man is standing on the ice in a $10,000 snowsuit saying, "We all need to change." It just seemed so hypocritical to me. And I know Richard. Richard is the most amazing person. He gives millions and millions of dollars to climate change and so many other causes. But it's impossible to go to each theater and explain that to each person. So I just didn't think it was the right thing to do. So we switched gears and decided to make a feature film, and we decided to tell Theo's story, but in a way with some humor and enough where people would find it amusing and it just wasn't all doom and gloom, so people would watch it. So Cassian Elwes, who I also knew, he jumped in and helped me considerably. He helped us cast, he helped do everything that we needed. He brought a lot of people on board that helped as well. And we just got a director named Esna Sands. He wrote the script and we just cast it and then just went about shooting it. And it was an incredible experience. And a lot of the things that are in the movie that people don't realize, the man in the movie is Theo. He's the original Inuit man that I met, and he played himself because there was no way we could cast him. He's just such a different character. And he's a lot like, I'm so sorry, I'm doing this on my phone. I don't know if that popped up.
No, no, it looks good.
Okay, good. And so he played himself, and he was with Dakota Johnson and Mira Sorvino, and I can't believe he did it. Like, he just did such a good job. But a lot of the little things in the movie are actual things that happened with Theo in real life, and the director would write them in. Like, every day he would put new little nuances in that Theo noticed about how we live our life and how we waste and how, you know, what he was seeing through his eyes. So it was just amazing. It was an incredible experience.
But so this movie is, I mean, it was inspired by, it sounds like, you know, you kind of thought you were making a documentary and then went and made a narrative film. How do you think audiences, because I've seen the trailer and I have not seen the movie, but it doesn't seem overly preachy at all. It seems more of a human story.
Yeah, we tried not to make it preachy, but it honestly was difficult because, you know, my background, as I said, is AIDS research. And what I knew from experience is if I did a presentation and I only talked about stats and figures and how many people were dying, people in the presentation would drink their coffee, they'd look at their watches, and they'd forget about it in 15 minutes. But if I told a human story about a particular woman who I knew who had to sell herself to feed her children in Africa, and, you know, then this happened, I could have people 3 years later that I would see somewhere and they'd go, oh my God, that story you told, and it would stick with them. So we knew that a story about one person was going to be a lot more interesting to people than a big climate change documentary. So that's why we decided to tell Theo's story. So, you know, it's based on a true story, but a lot of it is, you know, there was some humor in it. There's a lot that happens between him and Dakota. We made the homeless people heroes because they're very similar to the Inuit people. The Inuit people don't waste anything. If they kill an animal, first of all, they pray and they thank the universe for the animal and they thank their gods for the animal and that they can eat. Then they take every bit of it, the skin, the teeth, the skull, the oil for oil lamps, everything is used. And it's the same with anything. And the homeless people are the same. You know, they'll pick up something and they'll use it and they'll keep it with them, but they're kind of very nomadic. And so we're the Inuit. So we decided to kind of make a parallel there. And in the movie, Theo meets a group of homeless people that decide that they're taking him on as their project and they want to help him save the world. And it gives them something to live for. And when we shot in New York, it was important to me to use real homeless people and pay them. And so I ended up getting fined because you're not allowed on a union film, you're not allowed to use people. You have to use actors, which I didn't know. But to be honest, I don't care because I'd rather get fined because we were able to use about 60 homeless people and they got to work for 3 full days. And we fed them with craft services just like the rest of the crew. And it was a great experience. I loved every minute of it.
Well, I got, and this is maybe a cheesy comparison, but you know, having seen the trailer, I got sort of Crocodile Dundee vibes.
Totally.
I mean, in a good way, like a fish out of water story of like, what is this world like? Let's get to our comments. We have a lot of comments and some questions, and you know, we're happy that we're having you here on it's Earth Day. Right? It's Earth Day today. I totally like, oh yeah.
We totally planned it that way.
It's like we planned it. Yeah. But also like,
no, that's great. Yeah.
the movie is out and available. Is that right? On video on demand.
Yeah, I'm amazed, honestly. Vision Films has done such an incredible job because the first time around it didn't get out on a big scale. You know, even with Richard Branson and John Paul DeJoria, and even James Cameron helped me at one point, but it just didn't go that far. But this time around, years later, it's on every channel. It's on Hulu, it's on Vudu, it's on Tubi, it's on Amazon Prime. It's everywhere. So I'm thrilled.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Let's get to these comments and questions.
Okay.
So here we go. Side Hustle Life LLC says, I love Chloe and Theo. So good. Perfect Earth Day movie. Beowulf's Revenge
Oh,
says, helping in AIDS and cancer is nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
Holy Hand Grenade says, that reminds me, it's Earth Day today. Beowulf's Revenge says, sounds fantastic, though minus 45 is really cold.
yes.
Andrea McKinnon, and if you love Dakota Johnson, the cast is incredible.
Oh,
Andrew
thank you.
1234545 says, just checked out the trailer. Looks great. Scott Slaughterbeck
Oh,
says, Greenland is awesome. Holy Hand Grenades says, oh man, awesome. And then Scott Slaughterbeck, humans live at the South Pole and the Gobi Desert. We ain't going to vanish. Yeah, I take a more glass half full approach to like climate change. I think the climate's going to change no matter what. I think it's always going to change. And I think that we are so resourceful. Humans are so adaptable. I have faith in humanity. I think that, we should be less wasteful. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. We are, especially when you look at food packaging and the way that we do certain types of things. This is what always kills me with the gas prices being what they are, is you still see giant lines at Costco to save 10 cents or 15 cents, or you see a giant line at In-N-Out Burger when you can get out of your car and not waste a gallon of gas waiting to get a burger. These are just obvious things that to me always like, I don't know. What can I say?
no, but you're right. You're right.
Yeah, like there's just sort of simple things that to me are just common sense. And I just believe in humanity and our ability to adapt and to innovate. I think we are incredible creatures and we can always do better for sure. Toker 88 says, a measured discussion of climate change is fine. The alarmist panic and demand stuff is not my cup of tea. So I would say to Toker 88, have an open mind for sure. But yeah, I think there needs to be, because here's what I'm concerned about is kids. When I see so much of the climate change being like, if we don't change this in 10 years, everything is gonna, like, we're in trouble. And I don't know if I agree with that. Like, I actually have an issue of Newsweek magazine from I think it's 1969 that talks about climate change in it and how the world's going to end. And I think that narrative is turning people off because, one, I don't know that how entirely true that is. So I would debate. I think that that should be up for debate. And secondly, I do believe that that's hurting kids. When kids look at the future, am I going to start a family and have kids and my own children and contribute to, I think it's in some ways the alarmist panic is actually contributing to depression in kids and teens because they're being told that they have no future. So I think that this is just my personal opinion about this, and here we are discussing this on Earth Day. Is I think that I agree with Toker 88. There needs to be a measured discussion about it because I actually think when you look at the rates of depression in teens, it's off the charts. And I think social media and being sold a depressing future are the two things that are contributing to it. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. And there's, if you have any thoughts on what I just said, but I feel like dialing the rhetoric back from being so dystopian to being more hopeful might actually might be a more positive way to have the conversation, is all I'm saying.
No, I honestly, I agree with you 100%. And it's one of the reasons that we did see a lot of things that were very alarming, but we didn't include a lot of them in the film because we wanted to make it more about, because really the answer, it it's not only climate change, it's the fact that people now in this day and age, we've lost a sense of community. Like we don't care about each other. And if we did, it would solve multiple different things, not only climate change, but so many other things. And so the film is definitely about Theo and climate change, but it's more about caring about humanity. And if you watch it, you'll see what I mean. And that's what our hope was. There's a great little YouTube that somebody put on, and it's called The Story of Stuff. And I would tell anybody watching to watch that YouTube, because it's done in a cartoon form and it's the perfect way to show how we need to change. And it's a whole little cartoon about, how in the beginning in the United States, the government was telling us spend, 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 because we were trying to get the economy bigger and we were trying to, make the United States. And it was so successful that now it's just out of hand. And the one thing that I really realized by just going up to the Arctic, I mean, I've worked with a lot of indigenous groups because of South Africa and the AIDS work, and I've worked in China. So I understand a lot about the communities compared to what we have. And I mean, in South Africa, if you're in Soweto and you don't have food for the day, then your neighbors will all pitch in and give you food for that day. And the next day, it might be somebody else, and then you help them. There's just such an amazing sense of community. Whereas here, we could live in an apartment building for 10 years and not even know anybody else in the building. Like we don't, because we're so successful in the way that we have our own places, our own cars, our own everything. We don't have to associate with each other because we don't need a ride somewhere. We don't need a place to stay or any of those kind of things. But what it's done is make us so separate from each other, to the point where
Mhm.
now I feel like depression is caused because people aren't able to talk about what's going on with them, because it's almost like, well, if you have problems or you're going through anything, you're a weak person. And that's just
Mm.
not the case. Like we all go through hard times, we all go through good times. So, what the story of stuff does is it just shows you how much we waste. And that's a big point, is that we don't, we use things for such a short period of time, throw them away, and get a new one, and get a new one, and get a new one. There's really no other country like us as far as wasting. And it was so apparent with Theo, because if you spend a few days with Theo, he notices everything because it's not normal to him. In the Arctic, ships come in a couple times a year. I mean, the Arctic is, there's nothing there. It's just completely barren. It's just ice most of the year. And so you can't grow anything there. You can't produce any food there. So the Inuit people live off the land, and they eat mostly meat. Their diet is 90% meat, which is mind blowing. But they don't waste anything, as I said. So even when we flew here on the plane, and they had given everybody their trays of food, and then it came time for the hostess to come and pick them all up, and he was watching her throw away food after food after food, and he just looked at me and he goes, oh my God, like if there was a way that we could take all these trays, everybody in the Arctic would eat every single day and they would never, not have food or anything. Because for him, they have to go hunt their food. They live like we did hundreds of years ago. Like it just, and there was one Inuit man who was very upset one day, and we have some of that footage, and we didn't use it because it's in the documentary part of it. And he's talking and he's saying, you don't know what it's like to live how we have to live. You just walk into your grocery store, you're on your cell phone, you just pick out whatever you want from all over the world, and you never think, how did that thing of lettuce get to me? You don't think of, oh, at first these people had to grow it and they had to go through all of that. Then the shipping people had to put in their side. And then finally this happened. And then finally it gets to me. We just don't have kind of respect for how we get things because we're just so used to having everything.
Mm.
It's not insulting and it's not preachy. I'm exactly the same way. But because of the situation I was so grateful to go through with Theo, it made me more aware of, how much I was wasting or how spoiled we really, really are, because most
Yeah.
people do not live like us. We are so, so lucky. So now I just kind of have more reverence for how I'm getting things, or how lucky I am, or how I can go to a store and get anything I want, or go to the hospital if I'm sick, or anything like that, because they don't have any of those things in the Arctic.
Well,
So it wasn't, yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. No, I will
No.
say on a couple comments is one, I just feel grateful, like where I live, and the access and things that I have. I would say that like not knowing your neighbors is more of a city thing, probably more of
Yeah.
an LA thing. I feel very fortunate, like where I live in Pasadena is kind of like the Midwest, and I would
Yeah,
just
I
encourage
love Pasadena.
Pasadena is the best. And if you really want to get to know people, go to a dive bar. You get to know people really.
Yeah.
That's why I have my best conversations. And I would also encourage folks to like, I do what I call urban hiking. So
Mhm.
I like to walk places. So I live in Pasadena is a very walkable city. I'll never not live somewhere that's not walkable, because it's sometimes, because I spend a lot of time in front of a screen. I like to just walk, throw in some AirPods, listen to a podcast while I'm like walking all through my city several miles. And then I'll usually end up at the 35er in Pasadena. But I would just encourage, that's how you get to know your neighbors, is you walk around the neighborhood and you look them in the eye and you say hi. And what's weird is, and this is maybe an LA thing, is I will smile, look at someone in the eyes, and I'll say hello. And they're kind of taken aback, like, why are you saying
Yeah,
hi to a
it's true.
stranger? What do you want from me? And it's definitely Midwest. And I usually say howdy, even though I'm from Detroit, Michigan area. Like I still say howdy. I think it's because I love the South. All the times I've spent in the South, going to Atlanta, Austin, Texas, and among other places, Birmingham, Alabama, great city. So I'd say get to know your neighbors, and also just appreciate, what we have. And yeah, we could all be less wasteful, but I think a lot of it is the companies, right? Like I don't blame consumers as much as I blame the companies that provide this stuff. Whether it be our diet, which they say the food pyramid is completely wrong. That
Yeah.
all meat diet is probably better for us. It's how that's keto right there, right? Um,
Right.
it's weird. And I also just think experiencing other cultures does make you kind of take a different look at yourself and how you do things,
Definitely.
and
Yeah.
for sure, and what we value. A lot of comments here, so I want to get to the comments.
Okay.
Scott Slaughterbeck says, Ilusiet, I can't pronounce that. I'm so sorry. Ilusiet, Greenland is a great place to visit. Satan West, referencing you're hiring homeless people for your film. Satan West says, damn, she got fined for that. She seems genuine, though. So there you go. Scott
Aw.
Slaughterbeck says, climate change is like wealth change. Winning the lottery is wealth change. So is bankruptcy. Read
Huh.
by Nature says, I think the doomsayers turn people off to the message and encourages apathy, not action. I agree.
Yeah, I
I see this
agree.
in young people, like people in their 20s going like, well, why would I have kids? Why would I have a house? It's so wasteful. I feel
Yeah,
like
that's so sad.
the
Yeah.
messaging has to change, the doom and gloom messaging about the future of this country. And I think a lot of it is due to current leadership, and I say on all sides. Okay, I'm not pointing a finger at any particular. There needs to be a positive view of this country. And when you look at
Right.
past leaders, the ones that I have loved the most and the ones I've admired the most are ones that have a positive vision of the future of our country. And we're not
Right.
hearing it from anybody. You got to get more positivity, because you have no idea how that shifts the conversation. Zach says, that's because you're an entrepreneur, Chris, and you can't afford waste. It's a good thing. Yeah, I'm a small business owner, right? So I own Film Thread. I pay people who work for me. I have to pay for this. Like I'm not wasteful. So, and I also
Good.
donate a lot of stuff. I donate, and I'll buy stuff from my local Goodwill. B-roll says,
Right.
people drive across the town to save a nickel on gas prices. The ultimate. SMH. What's SMH?
Shake my head.
Yeah, shake my head. Okay, now I know what that is. I thought it had something to do with something else. I'm so sorry. Holy hand grenades, human party, no doubt, but the impacts humanity is having on the world are impacting climate change in a way it previously has never fueled within the past. We don't really know what awaits. I agree, but I am a hopeful. When you look at the history of humanity, I am hopeful, and I think that your movie, Monica, is a glimmer of hope, because, like I
Thank
say,
you.
I got the Crocodile Dundee vibes, and I think that's a good thing. Bethel Games says Gen X thought we would not have a future. Now we're 3 generations past the no future message. I just see how it impacts my own kids. My kids are in their 20s, and I see like how it affects their decision making. The messaging has got to be hopeful that we actually can have an impact and do something positive. And I think part of that has to do with the choices were presented. I don't blame people for just buying what's on the shelves because that's what's there. I don't blame people for seeing bad movies that I would not recommend because, well, that's just what's at the theater. I'm just going to go see X film, whatever that is. I try to steer them away from those choices, try to diversify your media diet so you're not just living off the latest big Hollywood blockbusters. So B-roll says the story of stuff is essential viewing. Thumbs up from the B-roll. So check that out. Alan is going to find the video and he's going to put the link in the description of this video.
Good.
So
I don't know,
Alan.
What am I looking for? Oh, the story of stuff.
Yeah, and you're going to put that in the link in the description for this video. Solomon Thornton says, social media to me can be so toxic, and I hate the fact that young teenagers want to live by what they see on social media instead of being true to themselves and being more kind. Love that message, Solomon. VDR, my depression era grandma would get so mad when I took her out to eat and they give her too much food. Okay. VDR, my grandma would just tell stories of like, I was just trained to not waste food at all. You ate what was on the plate. And that, to this day, my grandma's in my head when I'm grocery shopping. I'm not going to buy something I'm going to throw away. I'm going to buy something, and I'll keep canned goods, for like, just because you got to keep that stuff on hand. But yeah, VDR. Okay. Maybe our grandmothers were friends. But yeah, my grandmother and my grandfather grew up in the Depression era. He told me stories about how they'd have 1 potato for 6 people, and that was dinner. So when those experiences inform like how you live your life. Moving on, holy hand grenades. They use all the animal after a hunt. Truly admirable. Great comments here, Monica. I appreciate your patience with going through them.
No, I love these. I love this
discussion. Infinite Main, I agree. Wish people knew more about harvesting their own food. They'd be less wasteful. When I was a kid, my grandmother took us out and we would pick berries. They had a raspberry garden. She'd make her own raspberry jam. They'd take us picking apples. So we'd have to pick the apples. And we would go to these farms where they'd come in and they'd weigh your basket. Then they'd write a little note of like how much your basket weighed. You'd fill it up and then they just charged you by the weight. And she had a pantry where they would can goods and they made everything. We would go out to dinner maybe once or twice a year when I was a kid. That's it. Now we live in a society where I see like kids, like, why are you ordering and spending $30 to get Starbucks DoorDash to your house? I could spend $30 at the grocery store and eat for a week, or at least when I was younger, I could do that. Not so much anymore. Holy hand grenades. I live in a farming county. It's gorgeous out here. I learned a lot growing up here about the supply chains. Thank you, Holy hand grenades. That's nice to know. Micah P, a good thing to do is make a gratitude list.
That's a great thing to do. I agree with that.
You make a gratitude list. I see these people like that are like, and I'll allow myself to be upset about something for a day. Then I got to like, okay, pull myself up on my bootstraps, look around and see what I have and the people I have in my life. And I'm very appreciative. Micah P, thank you for that. RMFX says the world won't end in our lifetimes, but our current way of life will change drastically and become really uncomfortable. I think we have to take a look at, how we've kind of grown beyond, and maybe there's better, more efficient ways even to design cities, right? Like I won't live in a city that's not walkable or a neighborhood that's not walkable. I used to live in Los Feliz, and that's a very walkable city. There's a movie. I have to live walking distance to a movie theater is what I realized, and restaurants and bars. And I walk to Trader Joe's and it's like, what can I carry? 2 big bags and that's it. So that's all the groceries I'm getting. I recommend that. Side Hustle Life LLC. How did you get Dakota Johnson and Mira Sorvino to be in Chloe and Theo? Question for you, Monica.
God, because we just did the casting, and I honestly can't say enough about Dakota, because when we did the casting, it's the first time I ever sat in a room, and did that, where the people come in, they do the side, and then they leave, and it's one person after another after another. And so the director let me sit in on it, and I was so excited. But what I did wrong was every time somebody came in and they did it, I'd be like, "Oh, that was so good. That was so good." Because I didn't want I couldn't believe that they just come in, do the side, and then they walk out and nobody says anything. Like, because, and I felt so bad. So right away I would say, "Oh, you did so good. That was so good." And they'd be kind of shocked and then leave. And the director would be like, "Oh my God, don't say anything. You're not supposed to say anything." And I could barely do it. I had to sit on my hands and just stare because it seemed so rude to me. But we ended up, you know, seeing one person after another for the part of Chloe. And there were a couple actresses at the time that were bigger than her because she only did 50 Shades right after. And I can't even tell you how much that helped us. But so when she did it the first time, she was a little nervous. It was, you know, she hadn't done a ton of work yet. And then she felt bad about how she did, but she was still in the top 5, I think. So she wrote me a letter, and I still have it. She wrote me a long letter about how one of the reasons she became an actress is because she wanted to do parts like this where it actually made a difference, and that this would be her absolute dream. And please pick me. And then she flew back from Los Angeles because she had already left and we were in New York. She flew back on her own dime, and we were scouting different areas, and she came on a rooftop and said to the director, "I am Chloe," like that. And so
Wow.
And so she read again. She was in the callbacks, and she just blew everybody away. Like, there was nobody else it could be but her after that, because she wasn't nervous the second time, and she was incredible.
Wow.
And I think she did a fantastic job. I really do. She's very quirky, which she was supposed to be. She's very genuine. Like, you can really feel her heart in the movie. And so I just can't say enough about her. And then it helped, like I said, it helped us so much because when we cast her, a couple of people, like funders, were saying, "Well, but if you cast the bigger names, more people are going to see it and all of that." But we really wanted her. And so we went with her, and the director went with his gut. And it couldn't have turned out better, because a year later she did 50 Shades, and it just skyrocketed, and we got distribution because of Dakota Johnson. And man, Mira Sorvino was fantastic as well. When the director wrote it, he was writing it as real life. So the character of Mira is named Monica, and she's the one that he meets that tries to help him get his message out. So she followed me around everywhere I went and tried to pick up like things that I do. And it was so funny to see somebody like do a part and then say something that you say. Like, I say to people, "Good job." I say that all the time. I don't know why. It's a habit. And she did it on her own. There's a scene where she opens the door and she didn't do the line. She said, "Good job," like that. And I burst out laughing. But she picked up like so many. I can see why she won an Academy Award, because she picked up so many little mannerisms that I have. And it was bizarre to see somebody do that. But they were both fantastic. And we were incredibly lucky to get both of them. Both of them, to answer his question, came on board because they genuinely cared about the movie. They cared about the content. And so did the crew. I cannot say enough about the crew, because think about it. I was a completely green producer. I had never made a movie. And to get your first movie actually on the screen, and then to get it on all of these channels and everything, I only now realize how lucky and fortunate I am, because now I know a lot of filmmakers, and they'll say, "Oh, my first movie, it didn't even go anywhere. We ran out of money, and it never got finished." Or James Cameron helped me at one point because it was a climate change film. Ted Turner had a climate change event in Aspen, and he asked me to come and speak at it. And to be honest, I really didn't even look at what I was supposed to do. I just went there and thought, I'll wing it. Whatever questions they ask me, I'll be fine. And I'm just going to show a little clip of some of the footage because it hadn't been edited yet. So I get there and I'm sitting on the one chair and there was another one beside me. And I didn't even know there was another person that was going to be interviewed with me. And it was a massive crowd. And I was thinking, God, why would all these people come to see me? And all of a sudden the doors opened like God. And in walks James Cameron from like the door that was way up there. And he comes walking down the aisle. And I was like, oh my God, James Cameron's here. I don't even want to talk about my little film. And he just kept getting closer and closer and closer and walked up onto the stage. And he goes, he puts his hand down to shake my hand. He goes, hi, I'm James Cameron. I was like, yeah, I'm aware. And he sat down beside me and he was my person to be interviewed with. And you can see in the video, I start drinking water like 90 miles an hour because I thought I was going to pass out. And then he did his talk, and his was more about lobbying and how Avatar was a lot about climate change and the things he wanted to change, and how now he lives on a New Zealand ranch that grows organic. And, you know, he was just talking a lot about all of that. And then it was my turn. And I said, I don't even know why I'm lucky enough to sit here, but, you know, this is my little film. We went on a dog sled journey. We figured, you know, we found out what was going on. And I just wanted to try and do my part, whatever that could be. And then I showed some of the footage and I got a standing ovation. I almost started crying. I was trying to be so cool and I was not cool at all. And he stood up and said, this is what we need. People that care enough to just step out of their comfort zone and do something. And I've never been more proud in my life. And he handed me his card and he wrote his cell phone on it. And he said, look, if you need any help editing or any help with anything, call my number when you're at that point and I'll help you. And so I carried that number around like it was the Holy Grail for like 3 months. And then it came time, and everybody by then had said so many negative things. You know how people can be. And they were like, he's not going to answer your call. He just said that, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, I know he's going to answer and I know he's going to help me. And I called him and he was like, okay, great. Let's do it. Let's do it in my home movie theater in Malibu. He goes, when can you fly out? Because I wasn't living in LA then. He sent a car to get me. He brought me to his house and we sat in his home theater for 5 hours. And we talked about AIDS and cancer and pharmaceutical companies and climate change and the rainforest. And like, the guy is obviously a genius. He can talk on any level. He knew more about pharmaceuticals than 90% of the people I work with. Like, it was mind blowing to have conversations with him. It was one of the best days of my life. And he was the one that suggested that there be narration with Theo, even though we killed him. Oh, whoops, I just blew it for everybody. Oh my God. Anyway, watch the film. But even though we did something that isn't normally done, he said it's okay to break that rule because he needs to narrate throughout, because we need to see ourselves through his eyes, which was very important. And he was dead on. So we brought on a new person who wrote the narration, and he was fantastic. And his name is Michael Stiles. And he wrote all the narration. And when we added that, it made such a difference, because then it kind of explains, as you're watching Theo, what he's thinking in his mind about us. Like, and it's not preachy or anything. It's just his, like you said, it's Crocodile D. It's more like, oh, this man is so sweet. Like he's just seeing such a different way compared to his way of life.
Well, it's always interesting to see the world through someone else's eyes. I think that's the purpose of all fiction, whether it be books, comic books, movies.
Of life, to be honest. Because if we did, we wouldn't judge people the way that we do.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. I don't know how much longer you can stay, but we have a lot of questions here.
Sorry.
As we wrap
I'd love to stay all day.
Okay, well, let's get to some of these comments and questions. Some really good. The chat is on fire. We have over 100 people watching. Please smash that like button. Smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. It's our mission to bring you filmmakers so we can have a conversation about all types of topics. VDR is definitely not wasteful. Chris has every magazine he's bought since 1985. Probably true. I'd say, but I also donate a lot. Like, I kind of feel like when it comes to my possessions, I want them to go to a better place, whether it be clothing I donate or whatever. I
Good for you.
I hardly throw anything away. I'm always
good for you.
Recycling there, donating. Scott Slaughterbeck, doom and gloom does not help. Many exclamation points. Look at solutions. I agree. This is why I actually think that the narrative around climate change is so depressing. It's affecting young people. When you look at birth rates, when you look at like major life decisions that young people make, this narrative isn't helping. There's a different narrative. Scott Slaughterbeck goes on to say humans are very resourceful. We can solve global warming. And I believe that. They've talked about these the plastics that are in the ocean that are, the fish are eating it, and it's getting into humans. And there you can look, and this is why I love TED Talks. I am addicted, love the TED Talks, because it's a lot of people presenting, especially when you go into the science ones, they present solutions. And I saw a guy who had created this thing that collects, it's just organic. It's like a net that kind of almost moves on its own and just collects the garbage in the ocean.
I've seen that. Yeah.
It's fascinating. And I really believe that innovation is gonna save us.
I agree with you, like 100%. And Richard Branson says it daily, that exactly what you're saying. And you sound like an Inuit person, because even though it's happening to them, every day that we were up there, they were the most positive people. They were saying, we will adapt. We're human beings. We adapt. And that's what we've been doing since the beginning of time. But it's just, I think it's hard, because when we made the film, we almost got bashed a lot by the climate change people because we didn't say enough about climate change. But our thing more was to just show through Theo's eyes what he was seeing about who we are, and just try to make changes in yourself, because we always want to be the best we can be, and that's the whole point, is just to try. Once you know better, then just do better. That's basically it.
Well, I've always, and I guess it's just from my grandparents, the way they raised, they were practically my surrogate parents, my grandparents. And because they grew up during the Depression, no, it's not a bad thing. It was great. And they just taught me a lot, and positivity, having a positive attitude and look for solutions and not live in doom and gloom. And Scott, thank you for your comments. You and I are on the same page on that. Lagbate says, we're doing a garden again this year. Eggplant. I had no idea I liked eggplant. So there you go. Now, you can make a garden. I have a lemon tree in my little garden area, and I don't know, I'll throw it in my water, get a little lemon, I can make lemonade.
And honestly, that's the best thing you can do, because live food that's just picked, there's so many studies about it. It does better for your body than anything else that you could do. Just something live, and then you eat it right away.
Exactly. Lorena Creole. Hey, Lorena. I know her. She says people have even forgotten how to make meals at home. Eating out used to be only for special occasions. Lorena, you're exactly right. There's something about making a meal. I'm not a great cook. I think if you're a good cook, you're an artist. I'm better at baking. Baking is more based on science, and that's something I can do. But I can make a mean breakfast. DM Foe says corporations take an easier route by blaming their own customers as the problem, rather than creating an earth-friendly packaging and products. There is, first of all, great comment. There was a type of material that they were using that was made from corn syrup for packaging, for snack packaging, potato chips and whatnot, that they stopped using because the crinkle of it was too loud and people didn't like it. Look this up. Bill Maher talked about it on his show. So Scott Slaughterbeck said eggplant parmesan is sublime. We have so many comments here, Monica. You've really inspired our chat here. Kyle Mac with a K says Freeman Dyson had a great take on global warming and climate change. Look up Freeman Dyson. I would like to hear that.
I'm going to write that down, actually.
Yeah. Freeman Dyson. No one told Monica to have a poker face during the audition process. Please tell me the audition will be part of the special features in the physical media release. Well, hopefully there'll be some special features. on the
Oh,
physical
that's
media.
so cute. I wish we would have.
Side Hustle Life LLC, such great stories. Thank you, Monica, for sharing the comment there. Holy hand grades. This is even funnier considering Chris had just showed us his not cool moment before this interview. Yes, well, before you joined, I was showing embarrassing videos of myself because why not? Because we're all here to have fun. Cavatino Cavalryman Shay, note to anyone watching, have tissues in arm's reach when watching Chloe and Theo. Oh,
yeah.
Okay, all right. Good to know. Good to know.
I should throw in that Chloe and Theo is available on Amazon Prime if you have an Amazon Prime.
It's on Amazon Prime.
Yeah,
Lagbait,
and Hulu and a bunch of others.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Lagbait says, off topic. I know she said those are all scripts behind her, which is awesome, but I really like that cabinet. Well, there you go.
I know. Isn't it beautiful? It really is.
Yeah. Solomon Thornton says, my parents are old school. They always preach to me to recycle. I used to not do it a lot, but now I do it every single day. I've always, I mean, as soon as that was kind of introduced as a thing, is like, of course, yeah, we do that. Like, and my grandparents were definitely, because of the era they grew up in, you know, they were not wasteful about stuff, and they used to even like make fun of it, like, why would you go out to dinner? I can make a better, my grandmother would always say, I can make a better whatever it is. She could make a better burger, but she made, my grandparents were Polish and Russian, and they would make pierogies, and they were homemade pierogies.
Oh, I love pierogies.
Oh my god, homemade pierogies, the best. But we've got to wrap things up here. So I just want to thank you, Monica, for being on the show. And the movie Chloe and Theo, it's out. It's on Amazon. You can find it, look for it, and bring some tissues, as has been said. Monica, thank you for joining us on the Film Threat podcast. And good luck on the film. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. You're such a nice person.
Oh, well, don't let that
fool you.
Don't let that fool you. I have a sense of humor about myself. Maybe that's my saving grace. But people are saying, thank you, Monica. Thank you, Monica. There you go. Thanks, Monica. Appreciate it. All right. Talk to you soon. Take care.